We're chatting now with my friend Rajiv Rao, the Chief Technology Officer for the state of New York, as part of the Public Sector Innovation Summit. Rajiv, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Jake. Good to see you.
So Rajiv, a big theme in what we've been talking about as part of the summit is multi-cloud. And obviously there's so much that goes into that. When you're approaching this in New York, I mean, how are you working with other agencies or customers to ensure that the cloud products you're working on are meeting the needs of those folks?
Great question, Jake. So first of all, a little bit of background on New York State. We are not a federated state, meaning we've consolidated all IT under ITS. So I have a team of about 3,000 people that manage IT for all of the exec agencies. So in a sense, we really don't deal with the agency in terms of cloud, but we internally evaluate the best option, the best value, and the best fit for any particular business requirement that we see from the agency. And so most of our solutions that we either are building or are procuring are predominantly procured with being cloud agnostic, meaning we don't try to be specific to any one cloud. I like to leverage that competition to get best value for the state. And so our constant look is to find solutions that are cloud agnostic and be portable from cloud to cloud. And so we constantly are getting best value for the state.
And so, as part of that equation, right, there's so many, again, as I said earlier, so many factors that go into those kind of decisions. But let's dive deeper into the security side for a second. I mean, how do you see the approach to multi-cloud really changing in the future to address some of these obviously ever-changing and ever-growing threats like ransomware? And how do you see your approach to cloud improving or enhancing cyber moving forward?
Right. So it starts with making sure that whatever we are putting out there, whatever you're building, has a security component in terms of the evaluation, in terms of the assessment, in terms of the testing, in terms of the design. Security is along for the journey. It's not an afterthought that we build something and then say, hey, can we get a security review, and then try to retrofit it. So for us, security has become an embedded process where whether a particular cloud vendor offers us a particular feature or function is secondary to us. We look at the application, the project that we're on, and see how best to secure it from the policy perspective in New York State and the guidance we get from our CISO team, as well as the compliances that need to be adhered to by the agencies. All that is factored in before it even start to leverage the additional securities that a cloud platform might provide. And then those are obviously factor into the decision-making process of where it eventually will land, right? So it's iterative. It's not a simple, okay, cloud A or cloud B or cloud C. It is, what is it that we need to make sure that the agency's compliances are met, the state's policies are addressed, and then what other value props are there in the cloud platforms that we could leverage to further enhance. So that's how we approach it.
And another piece of this puzzle is sort of on that workforce side, right? It's on the people that make all of this possible. You mentioned you have thousands of employees who touch some of this stuff every day. I mean, we've talked for years in the state and local community about workforce gaps and some of the challenges that presents for states today. So what are your thoughts about some of the education and the training that's needed right now to make teams like yours successful in the long term?
So I'm going to rewind a little bit to the pandemic, right? That was a great enabler and a driver in the need for us to get out of our comfort zone and do things, right? Not only did it accelerate adoption in certain things, but it also highlighted the fact that we had gaps in some of the skills that are required to be able to build scalable solutions and things like that. So obviously that has shed light on that gap, and it has pushed us to deliver more to our employees in terms of learning, training, trying things out before we get into a situation where we're woefully inadequate in supporting a particular platform. So a lot of focus this year and emphasis on training for cloud deployments, training for on-prem deployments, and any procurement we make, we are looking to get training credits included in there. So it's not like they're getting something dumped on them and then they're trying to figure it out. We're trying to make sure training becomes much like security, part of the curriculum, part of the project. So we're not left woefully inadequate in terms of delivering services, right? So learned a great lesson in the last 2 years. Reality check, if I might say so, but we are certainly taking that a lot more seriously. And our principals are doing the same. They are certainly investing a lot more in that space. So those are some of the positives that, I probably say a silver lining in the whole 2 years that we've been going through this pandemic.
And I mean, when we're talking about that workforce and some of the training that comes into play there, I mean, what are some of the challenges associated with that? I mean, how are you working with these folks to make sure that they have that information and those skills that they need to get this stuff done?
So it has been a little difficult with we're still trying to get back into this new way of working with people telecommuting 50% of the time. There are some logistics issues with it, but also trying to identify tech stacks that particular teams are going to be repurposed towards, right? Because what they were doing years ago is not necessarily what they're going to be focused on going forward, because based on where the technology stacks have gone, what COVID has driven us to do in terms of delivering services to the agencies. So there's a whole new set of technologies that they were never exposed to or never had experience in. And now, as we start to transition to operational state, have become their responsibilities. So we are scrambling to train them really quickly, embed them with the expertise that we have on board to try to get them cross-trained as quickly as possible. It's not been easy. We're not there yet, but it's certainly an aggressive pursuit to try to get them where we need to be able to continue to deliver that high level of service. By all means, not an easy task, and sometimes it's like difficult. It's very difficult because people are set in their ways. People have learned certain things that are expertise. You're teaching them a whole new stack, right? So, but we'll get there. It'll take a little bit of time, but we'll get there.
I mean, I think, when we're talking about new technologies and the things that teams like yours are adopting as part of all of this change, I mean, it's pretty clear that cloud and obviously multi-cloud are a huge part of that and are a huge piece of that infrastructure going forward. I mean, when you do look forward, how do you see government agencies accelerating this work in cloud? And how do you see this all growing and changing even into the future?
Right. So, in terms of accelerating, I think we already did that. The last years have accelerated cloud adoption like nothing else has, right? So that elasticity, that capability to scale and deploy quickly, certainly were drivers for that adoption. But now we're starting to look at it from a ROI perspective, from a security perspective. Is there a better way for us to address problems like DDoS, denial of service attacks, things like that? Are there scalable solutions or scale-out solutions that we could leverage because we are in the cloud that possibly were not viable when we were building them on-prem or whatever? So that is a whole new look at it. And so when we start to look at new requests coming in from agencies, we certainly pause to look at it and say, how does this fit in with what we've done in the last 2 years? So that thought of, cloud first, not really saying we're doing cloud first, but looking at it to say, have we done this before? Can this bolt on to something else we have done? So that has become part of the equation now. In the past, it always used to be, okay, we're going to spin up a couple of VMs, we're going to throw this up there, we're going to get a couple of Java developers, we're going to take 6 months, we're going to do something. Now it's like, is there something there that we can repurpose and redo? So I feel confident that New York is looking at it in a way where we're pragmatically approaching it, but at the same time not hesitant to leverage it, having seen successes in the way it scales, be it unemployment, be it health credentials and things like that. So we've seen some really good successes and some great opportunity for us to partner with our business partners. And so I think that is only going to be positively moving in the right direction.
Yeah, that's great. And you know, one last question, a little bit more fun. You talk so much about how much things have changed in the last 2 years. If you had to take one thing with you, keep it with you in terms of moving forward and include this change in your processes going forward, what's one thing you would take with you, and what's one that you want to leave behind?
So one thing I'd like to continue to see happen is the cutting of red tape, right? We dropped bureaucracy in the face of emergency, right? And so we were very nimble. We were able to move things forward a lot quicker. And that's what the one request I keep bringing up to my principals is, let's learn from the last 2 years of what we did minus the bureaucracy, because that allows us to produce great solutions in record time, right? So that's one thing I'd like to continue to have, that sense of urgency, the sense of emergency, giving us the license to move at a faster pace. We certainly want to continue to have, because it changes the dynamic and the outlook of how government delivers services. And I love that fact, right? It's just, we know we can do it if you're allowed to do it. Don't tie our hands behind our back, and not that anybody is, but I'd like to continue to keep that, not fall back, right? What was the other half of it? Was what would I not like to bring along?
What do you want to leave behind? What do you never want to look back on ever again?
What I would like to get a little reprieve on would be, yeah, we needed it yesterday, right? The ability to sit and think about it for a second. Great, we delivered a lot of successes, but there's a certain amount of luck involved in it, and there's a certain amount of urgency that can certainly overlook some of the finer aspects of what's needed. But I don't want that to be the new norm, right? Everything, because you did it the last 2 years, should be done yesterday. There is a positive in taking a moment to reflect on what you're trying to deliver, how secure is it, doing your due diligence in that space. I'd like to continue to do that and not have to try to deliver on the expectations that were set in the last 2 years because of the pandemic.
That's great. Great advice as always. Rajiv, good to see you, my friend. Thanks for being with us.